It's a pleasure having you still tuned in at Church of Uganda Family TV. This is Health Pot with me, Adrian Austin Mukalazi. Health Pot is a program brought to you by Church of Uganda Family TV and Makerere University School of Public Health. Now, this program is centered around three aspects, that is maternal and child health, early childhood development, and other public health concerns. Now, today we are looking at a very pertinent issue in society, and I believe it is one of the key things that we need to know, especially one, maternal and child health, but also in early childhood development, because we are told that breast milk boosts the child's immunity, so it keeps them away from diseases. Their bodies are are strong enough to fight infections. We are with Pamela Kihembo from the School of Public Health, and we are looking at breastfeeding. Now, before the break, there are some recommendations that we introduced, but of course we didn't discuss them. These are the recommendations, breastfeeding recommendations by the World Health Organization. Pamela, I think we pick it up from there.
Okay, so these are actually, they are recommendations. You can call them guidelines. They are part of a bigger, recommendation on infant and young child feeding. Maybe late in sessions to come, we could talk about some of these complementary feeding, So we call it infant and young child feeding. So once you give birth, I told you that the child or the baby who is less than 1 year, we call it an infant. So once you give birth to an infant, in hospital or at home, we say that you should put the baby or the infant on the breast as soon as you can. So you might ask me, how soon enough? Yes, how soon enough we recommend within 1 hour. Whether you have given birth by C-section, once you wake up like this, they're supposed to bring your baby.
What about a mother who takes more than an hour to come back to their senses?
But it is even rarer now. I've seen women who give birth, then after 30 minutes they wake up. But these days they even do localized anesthesia. They no longer put the whole of you to sleep. No, you just keep awake, and then they sterilize only the area where they are going to cut. So after you have stabilized, they have taken you out of theater, immediately they bring the baby and you try on breastfeeding. Why? Because the earlier you try, you remember our thing, the brain, how the brain works. Once the child puts their mouth on the breast and they start sucking, immediately you inform the brain that, there is someone who needs to feed. So start preparing to make breast milk. So that is the first recommendation. The second recommendation, and which we always violate, is not to give anything to the child. Not even water, not even glucose. When you give birth, sometimes it takes like 3 days or 2 days, depending on how often you put the child on the breast, for breast milk to form. So, the child cries and the child cries and cries, and mothers become desperate. You are surrounded by your mother-in-law. She's telling you this. Your mother is there. She's telling you this.
Your neighbor.
Your neighbor. Sometimes these women get briefed when they are still pregnant. Then they get briefed on very wrong information. So when you give birth, you are not supposed to give anything. You're just supposed to keep trying the child on the breast until you start forming the breast milk. So that is what we call pre-lactio feeds. You are not supposed to give any pre-lactio feed to the baby until the colostrum gets formed in the breast. So usually, especially in private hospitals, it happened to me when I gave birth. The nurses were like, so where is the infant formula? I'm like, who has told they want to give infant formula? And they usually make mothers do those mistakes. But for the Basa who are watching us, that's a very wrong practice. In case you didn't know, the child is supposed to be put on the breast as many times as possible until the first milk comes. Yeah, you know, it will eventually come. So that is the second recommendation. Then the third recommendation is that you're supposed to breastfeed on demand. I told you. So how the health worker can do that is to make sure that the baby stays in the same bed or the same room with the mother. We call it rooming in. You know, so the mother should be close to the baby as often as possible. If she has had C-sections, you need to support her. You know, it is hurtful to sit up when you have that scar. You know, so they should at least put pillows behind your back. Someone should help you hold the baby. And we are going to even look at breastfeeding positions for mothers who have C-section. So they should give you all the support you need in order to breastfeed. So that is breastfeeding on demand. If you cannot breastfeed on demand, even when the baby has grown, whenever the child cries, you're supposed to give them their breast. It's their breast. That's their food. You know, yes, you're not supposed to breastfeed on a schedule unless you're working and it is not possible. But still, we shall see how can we enable breastfeeding or breast milk feeding to continue uninterrupted. Yeah, they're supposed to breastfeed whenever they can. That is breastfeeding on demand. It's the World Health recommendation. If you can't breastfeed on demand, then you should breastfeed at least 8 to 12 times a day. That's the minimum recommendation. Minimum means on a lower scale, but they can be as many as they can be. Then the other recommendation is exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. I said that breast milk, it has all the nutrients that the baby needs, even water. For the first 6 months, the child does not need a lot of energy. But after 6 months, the child is growing. There is a growth spurt from 6 months. That's when you start introducing other foods. But below 6 months, breast milk is supposed to be enough. If you're eating right, you're breastfeeding on demand, you're positioning correctly, and you are attaching the child correctly. So the breast milk that you produce should be enough to take the baby throughout the day. So you are not supposed, it is actually not allowed to give anything to an infant less than 6 months, not even water. Yes, even water is not allowed. Then the other recommendation is now complementary feeding. After 6 months, I've told you the energy needs of the baby are increased, and then you're supposed to introduce other complementary foods. Okay. We shall maybe look at what should you feed to the child after 6 months. Then we have what we call continued breastfeeding. So usually mothers stop breastfeeding at 1 year, but that's also very wrong. You are supposed to breastfeed up to 2 years and beyond. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
the minimum age which you are supposed to stop breastfeeding is 2 years. The minimum.
I know very many mothers have a lot of questions on
Yes,
that,
yeah.
on the 2 years, but on the 2 years and a half, but
Yes.
yeah. Okay. As we draw closer to the conclusion of this discussion, let us go through the breastfeeding positions and attachments so that a mother can know how they can hold their child while breastfeeding and why it is important to maintain these positions.
Yeah, so one, I told you that if you're breastfeeding correctly, then you avoid the other, other problems of, I don't have enough breast milk, my child cries all the time, they are frustrated, even child refuse to breastfeed if you are not doing it correctly. You have seen mothers telling into mwana yaganye bere. Yes, they will refuse it. And they'll just smile at you, especially the boys. They will say, this one is just a joke. And they refuse to breastfeed because you're not doing it right.
Okay.
Yes. So one, I'll talk about attachment. So attachment is how does the child's mouth get on the breast? So you know the breast has different parts. So if you look outside the breast, it has the upper meaty part, or it is actually fat. Then we have the round black
Patch.
the patch. Then we have the nuanto, or what they call the nipple. So the nuanto, behind the nuanto is that black part which we call the areola. I don't know how they call it in Uganda. Yes, so that black part is actually where the milk is stored. And that's what many people do not know. So you find the mother is giving the nuanto. The nuanto has no breast milk, it just has ducts where the breast milk passes.
Okay.
You understand? So if you are breastfeeding the child, make sure that the black thing is inside the child's mouth. If it is big, make sure that most of it is inside the child. So there is what they call a rooting reflex. A rooting reflex is when you put the nuanto in the child's, or a finger in the child's mouth, they open their mouth.
Yes.
So you tease until they open it wide. So they put the mouth around the areola, and when you have attached properly, you see the upper lip is really up around the areola. The tongue is really almost out, and the lower lip, this one, it's rolled outside. That's when you know good attachment. And how do you measure it? When the child is feeding, even you feel relieved. Yeah, you feel relieved, and the child will gulp. You just be hearing the child, they're gulping the milk, and they usually even sleep. Yeah, so that is a sign. When you breastfeed the child and they sleep, that's a sign of good attachment.
Okay.
So you must pay attention. And if your nipples are paining, if they are paining, just know that you're doing it wrongly. I've seen mothers even getting sore nipples. You are feeding the child the nipple, and they're biting it because the nipple does not have milk. The milk is in the alveolar, not in the nipple. Yeah, so suckling the nipple is wrong attachment, and when the child starts making clicking sounds, just know that you're doing it wrong. Yeah, they're not supposed to make that sound. So you're supposed to let them first open the mouth very wide, and you put almost the whole breast.
Yes. Now, take us briefly through the positions, and then we shall wind up this discussion.
So, also actually, before we go to the positions, also when you have attached the child on the breast, make sure that the child is free, whatever position that you choose, make sure that the child is very comfortable. If they are uncomfortable, they will definitely refuse the breast. So we have different breastfeeding positions, depending on what you like or what is convenient for you, or depending on the physiological status of the mother or the baby. So we have the most common one. The most common one is what we call the cradle position. Where you have your baby. You have, maybe if you want to breastfeed from this side, you put this arm across the baby's body, you touch their butt, and then their head rests on your biceps, and then you feed. So what are the things in this feeding position is that the baby must be facing you, and you should always pull the baby's body towards you. You get the point?
Yes.
So that is what we call the cradle position. Then we have the cross cradle. So a cross cradle is it is the same, but this time you are using two arms, and this arm is holding the baby's head. So that's why we call it cross.
Cross.
The other time you had
Crab.
one arm, and the baby's head was resting on your arm. And this arm was passing behind the baby's back, holding their butt. You get the point? But this time, it is across. You're using two arms, and this arm is holding the baby's head and pushing the baby's head to the breast.
Okay.
That's what we call a cross
Cradle.
cradle. And we usually use this position for very small children, like prematures,
Okay.
and it becomes, they are very small, it becomes very hard to balance them with one arm. Or for twins, so you put one child facing this side, another child facing this side, and you do a cross. Then we have the underarm. So underarm, some people call it the ball position. It's also for prematures or even twins. So what happens is that you put the child behind your arm, and then the legs go behind your arm, then you bring the head, and then you touch the baby's head like this, and then you put it on the breast. Yes. No, because the butt is under your arm. Yes. So it is called underarm. So you can breastfeed two babies at once. So it is best for twins. That is the underarm. Then we have the lying position. We use this at night. So it becomes very hard to first wake up and then you sit and breastfeed. So you just get your baby and you keep lying down and you breastfeed when you're down, but you have to make sure that the breast is not blocking the baby's nose. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's very important. And at that time you're sleepy, so you can forget, and the breast blocks the baby's nose. So you make sure that you put the baby's head on your arm, like this. You put the baby's head on your arm, and then you feed. Don't let the baby's head stay on the bed. You have to put the baby's head on your arm to elevate their head. Can you imagine drinking like this? So you have to elevate the head a little bit for the milk to go down very, very well. And then we have the baby sitting up, especially for children who are they are already sitting, they are crawling. Yeah. So the child can sit facing you, or they have even started walking. You are doing some work, you're writing, the baby can sit on your lap, they are facing you, and they are breastfeeding. So that is called the sitting position. Yeah. And then the other position is for mothers who have had a C-section. We call it the laid back position. So the mother can rest on the bed like this at an angle, with maybe you put pillows behind her. So you put the child is lying on the mother's stomach, and then you feed. So the child is on top of the mother. So that is the laid back position. So there are different ways in which you can support mothers to breastfeed, especially the mothers who are giving birth for the first time. You can have breastfeeding pillows. The normal pillow, you don't have to go and buy the sophisticated. No. Yes, they are there. The breastfeeding pillows are there, but you can have any other pillow. So you put it behind, under the baby's back, and then it elevates the child. You also need to put a pillow behind the back, and it supports your back. Yeah. So those are some of the different positions which we use.
Try out what has been shared and realize you still have challenges, especially if you have challenges with breastfeeding. Then I think it's time to now check for the other causes besides our position. It's been a pleasure having you, and we shall have Pamela again, taking us through more and more, especially what a very good evening to you, our esteemed viewers. We are grateful for you who chooses Church of Uganda Family TV day in, day out. We appreciate you. We are proud of you. And all we can say is that we love you so, so much. And we continue to commit ourselves to giving you the very best in family-friendly programs. Now, this is Church of Uganda Family TV, and this is Health Pot. Adrian Austin Mukalazi is my name. Now, just to remind you, if you didn't know, that every first week of August is the breastfeeding week. It is celebrated worldwide. But because it is so pertinent, because here on Health Pot, we want to intensify the awareness, we cannot just give in a week for this big cause. It is the reason we have prepared a number of series on breastfeeding, because we want you to really get the real gist of breastfeeding. I know very many of us have a lot of misconceptions, a lot of myths, and a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to breastfeeding, but we are grateful that we have someone who is going to answer all these questions. I believe by the time we complete this series, your life will not be the same, and you who had lost hope in breastfeeding, perhaps you'll have resumed, or you'll have gotten a reason as to why you should even breastfeed your child more and more. Now, join me as we welcome the one Pamela Kihembo, who is going to take us through a number of episodes on breastfeeding. But today we are basically understanding breastfeeding in general. Pamela, we are grateful to have you this evening, and we can't take this for granted, but kindly greet our viewers who are watching you right now.
Good evening, our viewers. I'm called Pamela Kihembo. I'm a public health nutritionist, lecturer and research associate at Makerere University School of Public Health. And this is the breastfeeding month, and we are discussing different aspects about breastfeeding. Thank you, and I hope you have a good time.
Yeah, and I promise you the same. Just to remind you that Health Pot is brought to you by Makerere University School of Public Health, and we are basically looking at the three pertinent areas of life. One is maternal and child health. We're also looking at early childhood development, but also other public health concerns as we all work with. But today we are basically looking at breastfeeding. Now, Pamela, when we talk about breastfeeding, very many mothers have a lot of fears. You know, when you talk about breastfeeding, we're like, oh, again, breastfeeding. But I believe out of this conversation, out of this discussion, someone will have a reason to embrace breastfeeding. But just to start from the preamble, the definition of breastfeeding, how can you break down breastfeeding to a mother?
Yeah, actually, it is pretty simple. It is breastfeeding, feeding a child directly on the breast. Or we sometimes, if you give breast milk, even if you haven't fed directly from the breast, you can call it breastfeeding, though technically we would call it breast milk feeding. So we have two aspects. There is breast milk feeding, and then there is breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is when you feed the child directly on the breast, and breast milk feeding is when you give expressed breast milk to the child.
Okay. Now that is also something that we didn't know: breast milk feeding and breastfeeding. But yes, we know, and we might take it for granted that very many mothers know why breastfeeding is important. Days back, when mothers went for antenatal, they used to take them through some of these things. But you realize we have mothers who never go for antenatal, or even those who go for antenatal are very busy. They don't have time for such lessons and discussions. Now, this is an opportunity to tell them why it is important for them to breastfeed their children.
Okay. So first of all, you have heard of the term custom made. Could you please tell me what you understand by custom made?
Now, custom made, medically or in a layman's interpretation? Now I will leave it to you to embrace it.
Okay, so that's the English is custom made is when they make something specifically
For you.
for you. So each mother has a child. The mother is the breast milk that the mother makes is custom made for
For the child.
So the breast milk the breast milk that the mother gives to the child is the most appropriate feed for that particular child. So breast milk has all the nutrients that the child needs, or the baby. We usually call them babies and infants. When the child is less than 1 year, we call them an infant. Yes, after 1 year, it's a child. So breast milk has all the nutrients. It has the carbohydrates, that is the go foods, the energy. It has the proteins, the grow foods. It has the vitamins. It has water. That's why we say for the first 6 months, you're not supposed to give anything to the child because breast milk is sufficient in all the nutrients. So that is one. Two, breast milk is easy to digest. So there are different types of proteins. I don't know if you've heard of something called casein. Yes, casein is the protein that is found in cow's milk, and it is insoluble. It is not easily digested. Then breast milk has a type of protein which we call a whey protein. So the whey proteins are easily digested. So breast milk is easily digested. That's why we said it's custom made. It is the food for children, for the infants. Not cow's milk, not goat's milk, not camel milk, not infant formula. So it is easily digested. It has all the nutrients that the baby needs. Three, when a mother is breastfeeding, she passes out, the breast milk has antibodies. So antibodies, these are like white blood cells in our basics English or science. They are white blood cells which are in the mom's breast milk, especially the breast milk which we call colostrum. The first 3 days, that thick yellowish breast milk that first comes. It is so rich in vitamin A. It is so rich in antibodies. And you know what white blood cells do, or what antibodies do? They fight against infection. So a child or a baby who is breastfed is less likely to develop ear infections, respiratory tract infections, and diarrhea. So it is protective of the child. And then the other reason is that when you're breastfeeding, you're bonding with your child. You know, we encourage what we call active feeding. Touch the child, talk to the child. You know, so during that process, you are bonding. So breastfeeding encourages bonding with the child. Then also breast breast milk. It is like what do we say? I think you have heard of people saying that in Uganda, magezi matono, they are using. So it has been proven.
These days they have even modified it that ya magezi amatono ina mangi.
Yeah, that's sugar coating. Yeah. So breast milk has been confirmed. Research shows that children who are breastfed, they pass highly on intelligence tests. They perform better in school, and of course, you know, everyone wants to perform better in school to be successful in life. Yes. So breastfeeding, it guarantees you that. And also, breastfeeding also, it is readily available. When you need it, bam, it's there, right temperature, stored in the most appropriate container. Then it is whenever you need it, it is there. You don't have to first wash utensils after breastfeeding. You don't have to. You don't need a cupboard to keep it. It is cheap, readily available. The child can get it anytime they want. So really, why wouldn't you breastfeed?
Now, you've talked about breastfeeding being readily available, but we've also had mothers who say they never have the breast milk. So a mother says, I introduced my child to the other alternatives because I didn't have breast milk. Is that really true, or people are just are causing reasons as not to breastfeed?
Sometimes mothers have seen mothers with such challenges. So you need to understand when a mother tells you that they don't have enough breast milk, you first talk to them and take the history. So there are many causes, all the different factors which we associate with low milk production. One, of course, it depends on the diet the mother is taking. We shall talk about diets maybe in the coming sessions. Then, also the mother could be worried. Even worrying that you don't have enough breast milk is enough
Hey.
to cause it. Because it's the brain. Once you tell the brain that you're worried, it just switches.
Well, you have less,
Yes.
you worry.
Yes.
Now that also has an
Yes.
effect.
Yes. Then the other reason is that you could not be breastfeeding correctly. Yeah, so there are a minimum number of times that you're supposed to breastfeed. And how breastfeeding works actually is that when you put the child or the baby on the breast, the suckling sends a message to the brain. When the message reaches the brain tells the breasts to produce breast milk. So the number of times the child breastfeeds, the more milk is formed. So, for example, if you're breastfeeding like once or twice a day, you definitely have low milk production. Yes, and that will take a toll on you. And most mothers don't know that science. They don't know that the more you breastfeed, the more the milk comes. And it's very common in mothers who are like working, they don't stay with the babies at home, at the workplace. Yes, that is the third reason. The fourth could be that you're not putting the child properly on the breast. So we shall also, in front there, we shall talk about how do you position the child on the breast so that you stimulate milk production. Yeah, so those could be some of the reasons. But also the most common reason, the sociological reason is stress. If the mother is stressed at home, if the mother is stressed at work, yes.
Now I realize there is a lot that we need to understand now. The mothers, the upcoming mothers, and those who hope to be mothers in future, but also the fathers out there. It is important that we listen to such information, because by creating this awareness, even the fathers can now help out to create a conducive environment for the mothers. Now, before we go for the break, kindly take us through some of the recommendations of World Health Organization.
Oh, okay. Actually, before we go to the break, there is a point we hadn't talked about how the mother benefits from breastfeeding. One, we talked about bonding. Yes, the other thing that has been scientifically confirmed is breast cancer. If you breastfeed, I think we have heard of this theory that you let people breastfeed so that they don't get breast cancer.
Yes.
Yeah, it is true. If mothers breastfeed, the chances of getting breast cancer is reduced. So it has been confirmed. It is very good. And also it helps mothers to lose weight, the baby weight, because breastfeeding takes a lot of energy. Yes, so once you start breastfeeding, you use a lot of energy. It helps. There is a certain hormone called oxytocin. Once you're breastfeeding, it is released and it contracts your uterus. The stomach reduces. Also, the breastfeeding process uses a lot of energy. You end up losing the baby weight. Yeah, so those are some of the ways. I know mothers want to lose weight after giving birth.
There is also something being talked about that breastfeeding is also a form of family planning.
Yes,
is that
yeah,
scientifically
yes,
proved?
Yes, and it has been existing since time immemorial. We know that, especially if you're still exclusive breastfeeding, but for it to work, you must be breastfeeding as many times as possible. Yes. So most of the time when you start getting away from the child, or you're breastfeeding inconsistently 2 to 3 times, 5 times, you end up getting pregnant. But women who breastfeed on demand, every time the child wants the breast, they give. They usually take long to get pregnant. It's called lactational amenorrhea. You don't get your periods when you're breastfeeding. But that protection usually goes away when you start breastfeeding a few times a day. Yeah, but some women are lucky, it can even go on for up to 2 years. Yeah. Yeah. And when they stop breastfeeding like this, they get pregnant. Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of the ways in how you can practice family planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think at that point, let us take a short commercial break. But when we return, we have a lot more to talk about when it comes to breastfeeding. Of course, we're going to talk about the various breastfeeding positions, which you don't really need to miss out, because we've been told that sometimes you do not have breast milk simply because of the position in which you are breastfeeding your child. Now, don't go anywhere, stay with us as we come back.